Hello, Wake Up New Zealand, Carol Sakey speaking. Well, Newsroom New Zealand had an exclusive interview with Ashley Bloomfield as he discussed in the interview the future of the pandemic and preparing for the next global threat, saying baseline measures, and he alluded to level 1.5 would continue even when borders were open for 3 to 5 years. And yet again, he said on top of that nobody could foresee the future, but obviously he and the government believe they can predict the future, because here they are pre-planning our future. So what does this mean? It means for 3 to 5 years we're going to go through social distancing, contact tracing, mask wearing, and all is mentioned in this interview. The testing, extended apps, more of that. And also there is a mention of COVID-19 vaccine passports, or otherwise known as vax passports. So the first utterance of truth I've heard is that Bloomfield saying no one can foresee the future. So what makes him and those sitting in the political toilet bowl at Wellington think they can? So as he announced the next stage of the pandemic, readying New Zealand for future global health emergencies. He said the question is, what will there be, as well as ramping up the vaxxers? Well, he answered his own question and said the government are thinking about keeping COVID level 1.5 measures for 3 to 5 years. Stuff New Zealand reported on the 13th of May 2021, that's just a little while ago, that Jacinda Ardern outlined what travel could look like beyond the bubbles as airlines consider vax passports. Ardern hinting at using vax passports as to fully reopen New Zealand to international travel. She called it beyond the bubbles as the vax rollout ramps up and the propaganda machine increasingly spews out cherry-picked information. So what do we need to know? Well, the government's not going to tell you what you need to know. They're going to tell you what they want you to know. So Ardern publicly speaks about those two things that need to be considered: how effective vaccines are in preventing transmission based on emerging evidence. Well, Ardern herself questions the vaccine's effectiveness and its safety. Otherwise, she wouldn't be questioning it, would she? How effective it is. And she says the flexibility to respond to any new variants of the disease posing a risk to New Zealand immunity. How do we know? As Bloomfield said, no one can foresee the future. You could say this about climate alarmism too. Ardern announced New Zealand is at phase 2 of its reopening plan, but remains in discussions with international bodies as to vax passports. She calls this a holding pattern that we're in right now. So on December the 17th last year, in an interview with Bloomberg News, she said that she aims to vaccinate the entire population of New Zealand 5 million. So if that's the case, that's every man, woman and child and every newborn baby. I have the link here for that. So publicly announcing on the second half of 2021, then this will start population of the whole of New Zealand being vaccinated. And she said that the government has secured 2 additional vaccines, enough for 5 million people, and the vax would be the key to the opening of the borders in New Zealand. Chris Hipkins said, to open borders, we need to be confident that New Zealand population is sufficiently protected. Well, how can you be confident? Because one size does not fit all, does it? And no one can be confident because no one knows enough. The data specialists, the research at the universities in New Zealand, everywhere, the government, Ardern, Professor Wiley, who won the Kiwi Bank Awards recently, even she says there's not enough data to know. So this is what's going on. With all experiments, people take risks. So if you're taking part in a human experiment, you take a risk. And I believe a lot of these people who are taking the risk have been coerced, have been misinformed in one way or another. They make radical decisions that they wouldn't normally make. How many people would actually put their hands up for human experiments if there wasn't some kind of mass propaganda? So the government are reliant on more human guinea pigs to gather more data. They say we don't know enough until we get more data. And the guinea pigs, more they roll out the vaccines, the more guinea pigs, the more data we'll get hold of, the more we will know. But it's evidence-based overseas that there are no guarantees, because they're talking about deaths, they're talking about serious harm, etc., etc. And that is evidence-based. So Ardern, Hipkins, Bloomfield, none of them can guarantee safety from these human experiments. So this Professor Wiles from Auckland University, from the Biological Sciences Department, reported, the big question is how safe and effective are different vaccines? The scientific community are still waiting to see all the data, so they don't know. She said whether how well it actually prevents transmission, prevents severe disease. They're waiting to see from the data, from the masses of guinea pigs who are going to provide that data. So they don't know whether you would get a serious disease or not. So I hear people saying, oh, well, I had the vax because if I didn't, I would be more inclined to get seriously ill if I didn't have the vax. So I had the vax because of that. But here they say they don't know. So that sort of blows that one away, doesn't it? So Professor Wiles states it will tell as increased vax are rolled out in New Zealand as they ramp it up, whether it's safe, whether it's efficient, and whether they can open borders. So how many people in New Zealand does Ardern intend to vax? Well, on the 17th of December last year, she told Bloomfield News she aims to jab 5 million people, the entire population of New Zealand. And that's what she said. The plans have been made. So all this thinking by the government, they already know what they're up to. So evidence-based info says no matter if you wear a mask, social isolate, contact trace, etc., as defined in level 1.5, which we're supposed to be in for 3 to 5 years, does not stop infection, does not stop the dreaded lurgy, and it's been proven. So they're talking about increased contact tracing, etc., to be continued for 3.5 years. Oh, 3 to 5 years, sorry, people. So no matter how many times you sneeze into your arm and you wash your hands, it appears it doesn't make much difference because you can still get the dreaded lurgy. And I'm sure many of us are fed up of being treated like kids, seeing these wash your hands on so many notices everywhere that we're just over it. And, you know, the more you actually sanitize your hands, if you become obsessive about that, you will actually get rid, destroy of all the good bacteria on your hands that do protect you. So we're being treated like kindy kids, really. Ardern, well, has she had her jab? No, she hasn't. But she's secured jabs for the entire population. So Ardern stated, we're moving as fast as we can, but we must ensure the vax is safe for New Zealanders. So they're not sure yet whether the vax is safe, otherwise she wouldn't say that. So there's a number of unknowns and these serious issues and concerns. If one jab is not efficient, we'll try another, says Ardern. So where human experiments become even more complicated when subjects are more vulnerable and feel more desperate to have a jab because they are living in fear. They're imprisoned by fear. Coercion, propaganda machine, the weapon of fear imprisons many to make desperate decisions. So these human experiments, the propaganda machine and what that spews out, the weapon of fear. So the propaganda machine, the coercion, whether it's subtle or in your face, fear imprisons the mind. Therefore, you make decisions that you would not normally make because you're living in that fear of what may happen. So I've made a link to this on MedSafe. So New Zealand regulations, guidelines for medicines. The New Zealand Medicines Act 1981. Applications for approval of new or changed medicine. Products used on humans for therapeutic purpose. These are characterized in the Medicines Act, these therapeutic medicines, and they relate to products such as herbal remedies, medical devices, medicines that or products intended for a therapeutic purpose. That is, if it's claimed to be that. Not all medicines have a pharmaceutical effect. Therapeutic purpose is defined in Section 4 of the Medicines Act. So therapy comes under the Medicines Act. And the Medicines Act includes treatment, diagnosis, prevention of disease, modification of a psychological function, includes cleaning, soaking, or lubricating contact lenses, inducing amnesia, or affecting contraception. The Medicine Act also includes controlled drugs. The Medicine Act is associated with the Medicines Regulations, also Misuse of Drugs Act 1975. This is drugs regulations. So under the Medicines Act, a therapeutic claim can be direct, implied, or suggested. It's not unlimited. States describing products as in the use of words such as will, can, may, is intended to give relief from a disease, pain, symptoms associated with a disease. It's very broad. These are known as therapeutic claims. So 1.12 of the Medicine Act states, consent is not to be used for promotional purposes, and it refers to ministerial consent for the distribution of new or changed medicine or related product is not to be construed an endorsement of any claim for that product. Well, let's think about that, because what is the government actually doing? They are actually promoting this COVID-19 vaccine, the labelling of it, the names of the pharmaceutical companies, etc., that are actually distributing it. So the Act says no label or advertising, promotional or other published material about the product. Supplying unapproved medicines where full or professional consent has not been given can actually be granted. A medical practitioner can make a request for a patient to have an unapproved medicine, and that can be granted, but only for that purpose, for that patient, and it's not to be advertised. So it's got to be kept hush-hush. So environmental protection and MedSafe work together, and there are confidential limitations between the pharmaceutical company, the manufacturer of the drugs, and MedSafe. So not all is exposed to the public who are the guinea pigs. So Section 1.12, the Medicines Act, consent is not to be used for promotional purposes. Think of this. This refers to ministerial consent for the distribution of new or changed medicines or related products is not to be construed as an endorsement of any claim for the product. No labelling or advertising, promotional or other published material about the product. Well, ministerial, how do you define that? Well, that relates to government minister or ministers, also a backbencher who has never held ministerial office. Therefore, I conclude, are these governmental ministers, including Ardern, Bloomfield, etc., are they guilty of breaking this section of the Act, the Medicines Act 1981, Section 1.12, because they have promoted these products? So I personally believe they have breached the law. They have breached the Medicines Act 1981 because they have promoted this intentionally so. So the Maori Party and Labour have stated that Maori are to be prioritised for these human experiments, all the whānau to be vaxxed together. This will protect them. Well, that's a lie, because we don't know. Because Professor Wiley, who got that Kiwi Bank award, Jacinda Ardern, Bloomfield, they've all said it is unknown. There is not enough data as yet. So there's lies being told. So efficiency, safety is unknown. This is a risk of human experiments, people. The unknown, all part of being a guinea pig. A guinea pig where you probably would not be a guinea pig of human experiments unless there was a large propaganda machine and you were actually told the truth. Because it doesn't matter about all the masks you wear, whatever kind, whether you social isolate, whether you social distance, whether you have contact tracing, whatever you do, it is evidential that you can still be infected by the dreaded lurgy and transmit it. Doesn't matter how many times you wash your hands or sneeze into your arm, you can and get vaxxed. There is far too many unknowns, and there's admittance of that through the authorities and from the government. So I just felt I had to say that because after reading the Medicines Act, it's really opened things up. And I do have to wonder whether the government ministers are actually breaching 1.12, Section 1.12 of the New Zealand Medicines Act 1981. Please share, and subscribe.